As the Johnson family lawyer read out the details of their late great-aunt Agatha's will, anticipation filled the room. The Johnsons, consisting of parents Mark and Sarah, along with their two children, Emily and Jacob, listened intently. They had always known Aunt Agatha as the eccentric relative who lived in the old Victorian mansion at the edge of town. Little did they expect that she would leave the sprawling estate to them. The news was met with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The mansion had been vacant for years, shrouded in rumors of hauntings and dark secrets. Yet the prospect of living in such a grand and historic home was too enticing to resist. They packed their belongings and made their way to the outskirts of town, where the imposing silhouette of the mansion loomed against the evening sky. Upon arrival, they were greeted by the musty scent of age and neglect. Cobwebs adorned the grand entrance, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. As they explored the rooms, they marveled at the ornate furnishings and antique decorations that filled the house. Each corner seemed to hold a piece of history, whispering secrets of bygone eras. It was in the attic, however, that they made their most chilling discovery. Amidst the forgotten relics of the past, tucked away in a dusty corner, lay a collection of old toys and trinkets. Among them, nestled in a bed of moth-eaten fabric, was the porcelain doll. Its delicate features were frozen in an eternal smile, yet its glass eyes seemed to gleam with a sinister intelligence. Mark reached out to pick up the doll, feeling a shiver run down his spine as his fingers brushed against its smooth surface. There was something undeniably eerie about the doll, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Yet, despite the unsettling feeling it evoked, he couldn't tear his gaze away. Little did the Johnsons know that their lives were about to be irrevocably changed by the malevolent presence that lurked within the walls of their new home. As the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness descended upon the mansion, the Johnson family settled into their new surroundings. Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, preparing a meal for the family, while Mark and the children explored the sprawling estate. Emily and Jacob raced through the corridors, their laughter echoing off the walls as they played hide-and-seek among the antique furniture. Yet, with each passing moment, an uneasy feeling settled over them. It was as if the very air around them was alive with a sense of foreboding. Meanwhile, Mark found himself drawn back to the attic, unable to shake the memory of the haunting porcelain doll. He climbed the creaking stairs, the soft glow of his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. As he reached the top, he felt a chill run down his spine. The attic seemed different now, somehow darker and more oppressive. The toys and trinkets that had once seemed innocuous now appeared twisted and malevolent in the dim light. And there, in the corner, sat the porcelain doll, its glass eyes seeming to follow Mark's every move. He reached out to pick it up, his hand trembling slightly as he grasped its delicate form. As he did, he could swear he heard a faint whisper emanating from the doll, a soft voice that seemed to speak directly into his mind. He recoiled in horror, dropping the doll as if it had burned him. Shaken, Mark quickly made his way back downstairs, determined to put the unsettling encounter behind him. Sarah's cheerful demeanor faltered as she noticed Mark's troubled expression upon his return from the attic. Sensing his unease, she approached him, concern etched on her face.
"Is everything all right, honey?"
she inquired, her voice laced with worry. Mark hesitated, unsure of how to articulate the strange encounter he had just experienced. Instead, he forced a reassuring smile and brushed off her concern.
"It's nothing, just a draft up there,"
he lied, his mind still reeling from the haunting whispers that seemed to linger in the air. Sarah regarded him skeptically, but chose not to press the issue further. However, as the family gathered around the dinner table, the atmosphere remained tense, the unspoken tension palpable. As they ate, the children regaled their parents with tales of their explorations around the mansion, oblivious to the undercurrent of unease that permeated the air. Yet, even their youthful exuberance couldn't dispel the lingering sense of dread that hung over the Johnson family like a shroud. After dinner, as they prepared for bed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside seemed to set her on edge. She tried to shake off her irrational fears, chiding herself for succumbing to superstition. But as she lay in bed, the whispers that had plagued Mark in the attic now invaded her thoughts as well. Soft and insidious, they seemed to seep through the walls of the mansion, filling the air with a sense of dread that was impossible to ignore. In the darkness of the night, as the moon cast its ghostly glow over the mansion, the Johnson family found themselves ensnared in a web of terror from which there seemed to be no escape. And as the hours ticked by, the whispers grew louder, their words echoing with a sinister intent that sent shivers down their spines. Unable to bear the oppressive atmosphere any longer, Sarah rose from her bed and made her way down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. She felt drawn to the attic where Mark had encountered the unsettling presence earlier. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door to the attic and stepped inside, the darkness enveloping her like a suffocating cloak. Moonlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As Sarah's gaze swept over the cluttered room, she noticed something out of place. A small antique doll lying on the floor, its porcelain face twisted into a grotesque smile. The sight sent a shiver down her spine, and she felt a cold dread grip her heart. Unable to tear her eyes away from the doll, Sarah reached out a trembling hand and picked it up, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface of its face. In that moment, a sudden chill swept through the room, and Sarah's blood ran cold. Whispers filled the air, faint at first, but growing steadily louder, until they seemed to surround her, suffusing the room with their malevolent presence. Sarah felt a wave of terror wash over her, and she knew that she was not alone. With a gasp, she dropped the doll and turned to flee, but before she could make her escape, she felt a cold hand close around her wrist, pulling her back with a strength that belied its size. Paralyzed with fear, Sarah looked up to see the ghostly figure of a young girl standing before her, her eyes filled with an otherworldly sadness. The ghostly figure of the young girl stood before Sarah, her pale form illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the attic windows. Her eyes held a haunting sadness, and Sarah could feel the weight of centuries of sorrow emanating from her spectral presence. With a trembling voice, Sarah spoke, her words barely more than a whisper.
"Who are you?"
she asked, her voice quivering with fear. The ghostly girl regarded Sarah with an ethereal gaze, her expression filled with a mixture of longing and despair. Slowly, she began to speak, her voice echoing through the attic like a mournful lament.
"I am Emily,"
the ghost whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling of the wind outside.
I lived in this mansion long ago, before it became a place of darkness and despair. I was but a child when tragedy struck, and now my spirit is bound to this place, unable to find peace.
Sarah listened in horror as Emily recounted the tragic events that had unfolded within the mansion's walls, events that had left her spirit trapped in an eternal cycle of torment and despair. She spoke of a malevolent force that had taken root within the mansion, feeding on the fear and suffering of those who dwelled within its walls. As Emily's tale came to an end, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that she and her family were in grave danger, and that they must find a way to escape the mansion before it was too late. But as she turned to leave, she felt a cold hand close around her wrist once more, holding her in place with an otherworldly strength. Sarah's heart pounded frantically as she tried to break free from the ghostly grip holding her in place. The air became thick with tension, and the oppressive weight of the mansion seemed to press down on her from all sides. Despair clawed at Sarah's mind as she searched for a way to free herself from the evil force holding them captive. She looked around the attic, and her gaze fell on the antique doll that had brought them to this cursed place. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out and grabbed the doll, feeling a rush of icy energy coursing through her veins. The doll's eyes glowed with some otherworldly light, and Sarah sensed that in them lay the key to their salvation. Gathering all her courage, Sarah spoke the words of a long-learned spell, hoping it would be enough to break the curse that held her captive. As she spoke, the air crackled with energy, and ghostly figure recoiled in fear. For a moment it seemed that the spell had worked, and Sarah felt a rush of relief wash over her. But then, with a chilling shriek, the malevolent force surged forward, its dark energy enveloping Sarah and the entire mansion in a suffocating embrace. Sarah and her family fought desperately against the swirling darkness, their minds filled with terror as they tried to break free. But as the darkness closed in around them, Sarah realized that they were doomed. After all, it was the haunted doll that had decided their fate, its ancient curse consuming them all in a maelstrom of fear and despair. And as the echoes of their screams dissolved into darkness, the mansion fell back into silence, its secrets buried deep within the haunted halls.